He said, small stone after small stone. 4 words. And if you were not listening closely, you missed the whole story of Lewis Hamilton's season. Because Fred Vasseur did not just describe a comeback this week. He revealed the blueprint behind it. And once you understand what he actually meant, you understand why Ferrari is not panicking about the championship gap, why Hamilton looks like a different driver than the one who finished last year without a single podium, and why the next race on a circuit that suits this car almost perfectly might be the moment everyone stops calling this a recovery and starts calling it a takeover. You have probably seen the headline, Hamilton finally happy at Ferrari. Vasseur praises his driver. Feel-good story, scroll past it, but that is not what this is. Vasseur does not talk in compliments. He talks in engineering language, even when he is talking about a person, and when the man running the most scrutinized team in Formula One chooses the phrase, small stone after small stone to describe what happened to Hamilton. He is not being poetic. He is telling you, in code, exactly how Ferrari solved a problem that looked unsolvable 12 months ago. Stay with me on this, because by the end you will understand why Vasseur is already talking about Hungary before he has even finished celebrating Spa. That timing is not an accident. Keep that in mind, it comes back. Before we open this file, do 2 things. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the follow-up when Ferrari's championship math actually starts adding up, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. This next part hits different depending on which side of this rivalry you are rooting for. Here is where the story actually starts. Last season, for the first time in a 19-year career, Lewis Hamilton did not stand on a single Formula One podium, not once. A driver with more race wins than anyone in the history of the sport went an entire year without a trophy. And Vasseur, speaking candidly about it recently, admitted something most team principals would never say out loud. He said he personally underestimated the change Hamilton was walking into. 20 years inside Mercedes, 20 years of one language, one group of engineers, one way of feeling a car through a steering wheel, and then, overnight, all of it gone. New team, new software, new people, new car philosophy. Vasseur put it simply, lose a couple of hundredths of a second here, a couple there, and in a field this tight, that is the difference between fighting at the front and disappearing into the midfield. That is the wound. Now here is the stitch. This year, Hamilton has 5 podiums. One of them a win, his first since leaving Mercedes, delivered in Barcelona, almost exactly 30 years after Michael Schumacher's first Ferrari victory at that same circuit. Symbolism aside, the number that matters is 5. 5 podiums by this stage of the season, compared to 0 across the whole of last year. That is not a small adjustment. That is a different driver in a different car built around him. And here's the part that changes how you should read all of it. Vasseur was not asked to explain a miracle. He was asked why Hamilton suddenly looks comfortable, and his answer was almost anticlimactic in how ordinary it sounded. He said it is coming from both sides. The team knows Lewis better. Lewis knows the team better. They built the car together from the start of this project because Hamilton was already there when it began. And then the line that should stop you. There is no single change that transformed everything. It is small stone after small stone. Which brings us to why that phrase matters more than it sounds. Vasseur is telling you, without saying it directly, that Ferrari never had one big fix. No secret setting, no miracle upgrade, no switch flipped in a factory meeting. What they had was patience. Brake material changed to match what Hamilton used for 2 decades at Mercedes. Engineering relationships slowly rebuilt after the departure of a race engineer Hamilton trusted completely. Small technical concessions nobody wrote headlines about. Stack enough of those small stones on top of each other, and eventually you are not managing a difficult transition anymore. You're watching a 7-time champion drive like one again. Now, hold that thought, because Silverstone is where the proof actually showed up. Ferrari arrived at that weekend not expecting much, coming off a tough outing in Austria where neither car could live with the Mercedes pace. And then Charles Leclerc won, Ferrari's first Silverstone victory since 1998, with Hamilton finishing 3rd right behind him. 2 Ferraris, 1 podium each, on a weekend where the team itself admitted it was not the favorite. Would you call that coincidence, or does it look suspiciously like a pattern building underneath the surface? Tell me straight in the comments, because Vasseur clearly believes it is the second one. And then came Spa. This is where it gets tense because Spa was not a clean weekend for Hamilton. He finished 4th after a 5-second penalty for an opening lap collision with George Russell, who retired from that contact, and Hamilton also faced a post-race investigation for for an unsafe release from his own pit box. Vasseur, asked directly about the penalty, did not go to war with the stewards. He chose his words carefully. He said it seems tough. 4 words, from a man who never wastes them. Not a complaint, not an accusation, just enough to tell you he did not fully agree, without lighting a fire he would have to put out later. That restraint is the whole story of Vasseur's leadership in one sentence. He is not managing a driver. He is managing a comeback, in public, in real time, one carefully chosen phrase at a time. So tell me in the comments, is this a pattern, or is Formula One just genuinely this unforgiving on marginal calls? And if you think Vasseur played that moment exactly right, smash that like button so I can see how many of you are on his side. Here is what they did not put in most of the headlines about Spa. Despite the penalty, despite the investigation, Vasseur walked away from that weekend calling the overall result strong. Ferrari was not expected to compete at Silverstone or Spa, 2 circuits that do not traditionally favor this chassis, and they still left with podiums at both. Antonelli won Spa by 1.9 seconds after a late pass on Leclerc, with Piastri finishing 5th. Close margins, at tracks that were supposed to be Ferrari's weakest of the season. And this is the moment where Vasseur said something that should have made every rival nervous. Before the sport even finishes talking about Spa, he was already looking ahead. He said the next circuit, the Hungaroring, suits Ferrari's car a bit better. Not hope, not a wish. A calculated read of where this chassis performs best, delivered by the one man with access to every data point behind that judgment. Which brings us to the real question hiding underneath all of this. If Ferrari can take podiums at 2 circuits that were supposed to expose their weaknesses, what happens the moment they arrive somewhere built for their strengths? Here's the verdict, and here is why that 4-word phrase matters more than any single race result this season. Vasseur was never talking about one car change, one wing, one setup tweak. He was describing a system. A team principal who absorbed his own miscalculation about how hard the transition would be, then quietly rebuilt the relationship stone by stone until the driver who went an entire year without a podium suddenly could not stop collecting them. That is not luck. That is not a hot streak. That is a deliberate campaign, and Vasseur just told the entire paddock, almost in passing, that the next stop on the calendar is where it was built to pay off. If you were in Vasseur's position right now, would you have gone public with that confidence before a single lap is driven in Hungary? Or would you have stayed quiet and let the results speak first? There is no comfortable answer here. Pick one in the comments. This story is not over. When Ferrari rolls into the Hungaroring, on a layout Vasseur himself flagged as favorable, you are going to want to have this context already loaded, not scrambling for it after the fact. Subscribe now, because when that next domino falls, this channel is where you will see it coming first. Drop a like if you think Vasseur's small stones are about to build into something Mercedes cannot ignore anymore, and tell me in the comments, straight up, agree or disagree. Is Lewis Hamilton finally, actually unstoppable? Or is this still one strong weekend away from falling apart? The comments are the courtroom on this one. Until the next one.